Hi, I'm John, whatever this color is, and this is Crash Course U.S. History. Today we'll be talking about the founders of North America, who are, you guessed it, the Native Americans. Mr. Green, what about George Washington and Ben Franklin and those guys? Oh, me from the past, you poor misguided fool. Everyone but you knows that the original founders of North America and the original inhabitants of North America were always the Native Americans. Actually, before Washington and Franklin came to the Americas, Spanish conquistadors like Pizarro and Cortez came searching for gold, and they also wiped out Indian civilizations such as the Incas and the Mayas with their most powerful weapon, disease. Eventually, the diseases brought over from the Old World into the New World killed about 90% of the 54 million Native Americans living in America. Elsewhere, the English are also trying to set up colonies in North America. One of the first English colonies was Jamestown, which was run by John Smith. Now, John Smith ended up marrying Pocahontas, and no, I am not talking about the Disney character who sang about the colors of the wind. I am talking about Pocahontas, the daughter of the Powhatan-in-Chief. Now, the English settlers and the Native Americans might have been allies if the English hadn't been stealing the Indians' food. Tensions between the Powhatans and the English settlers finally reached a breaking point and ended up in the First and Second Anglo-American Wars. Now, here on Crash Course History, we don't like to talk about the details of war, but long story short, the Indians lost badly. Another major war that the Indians were involved in was the French and Indian War, which is also known as the 7 Years' War, on account of the fact that it lasted for 9 years. Both the British and the French wanted to keep the Indians on their side. The British even presented the Iroquois Confederacy with 30 wagons full of gifts, including guns. However, many of the Indians ended up fighting on the French side because they were promised money if they killed and brought back the heads of the British colonists. Eventually, the French were defeated and the Indians were left to fight for themselves against the British. By 1669, only 2,000 Native Americans remained in their ancestral homelands in Virginia. The Anglo-American War was the first of many wars between the Native Americans and the English. The Second War began in 1675 when an Indian named King Philip banded together many different Indian tribes into one big group and started to attack the American frontier. At the end of the fighting, 52 Puritan towns were attacked and 12 were completely destroyed. Hundreds of colonists were dead and thousands of Indians were also dead.
Hi, I'm John Blue. So Napoleon wanted to earn a quick buck to fund his war efforts. He then offered Thomas Jefferson $15 million for the Louisiana Territory. Jefferson could not refuse such a sweet deal. When the Americans received the land, they believed that they were owners of the land, while the Indians had no say in the matter. They were forcibly removed off of their land and given reservations. So after Louisiana purchase, Thomas Jefferson sent Lewis and Clark to explore the newly purchased territory. They met Sacagawea of the Shoshone tribe. She became their translator, interpreter, and their guide in the new territory. And in the end, she died to disease. After that, the Americans continued to conflict with the Indians. During the Seminole War, John C. Calhoun ordered Andrew Jackson to stop the raids on American territory by the Seminole Indians. But it was actually an excuse to invade Florida. During the invasion, Jackson destroyed more than 300 Indian homes. The U.S. boldly took responsibility for Andrew Jackson's actions because they want to show Spain that they have the power to take Florida. But Jackson did not stop there. After he became president, Jackson was ready to take what was rightfully America's. He first refused to enforce the Supreme Court's decision to uphold the rights of the Indians. He then forced the Cherokees, the Creeks, the Choctaws, the Chickasaws, and the Seminoles to move beyond the Mississippi. His policy forced 100,000 Indians to move west by passing the Indian Removal Act. The most famous move to the west was the Cherokees Trail of Tears. The Cherokee walked 1,000 miles over 116 days, and many died along the way. Disease. Oh, it's time for the mystery document? The rules are simple. I read the mystery document, which I've never seen before. If I get it right, then I do not get shot by the shotgun. If I get it wrong, then I do.
This little event of Frances possessing herself of Louisiana is the embryo of a tornado which burst on the countries on both sides of the Atlantic and evolves affects their highest destinies.
Well, I have no idea who wrote this, so I'm going to take a wild guess. It must be an American, so it's Thomas Jefferson? Yeah!
Hi, this is John Gray. There were also a few Supreme Court cases regarding the Native Americans as a minority, including the Cherokee Nation versus Georgia and Worcester versus Georgia, because we all love Georgia. Cherokee Nation versus Georgia was a case in which the court ruled that it lacked jurisdiction, the power to hear a case to review claims of an Indian nation within the United States. In Worcester, the court ruled that only the United States and not the individual states had the power to regulate or deal with the Indians, which we all know would never go down well. To top it all off, in the 19th century, the U.S. embarked on something we call manifest destiny, which was the U.S. No.
Just keep going.
Okay, to top it all off, in the 19th century, the U.S. embarked on something we call manifest destiny, or the U.S. expansion westward. One way the federal government supported westward expansion was by leading the American Indians westward on ever smaller reservations and destroying their culture. Let's go to the thought bubble. The main reason Native Americans were moved off their land was because white people wanted it. The land was used for many purposes like railroads, farming, and of course, looking for gold and iron. What began as early settlement along the Oregon Trail later became bloody battles that would continue to decrease the Native American population until the late 19th century. The Indians did try to fight back, however, like in the Battle of Little Big Horn in 1876, where the Sioux and Cheyenne warriors destroyed George Custer's force of 250 cavalrymen. Still, the Native Americans were wiped out and moved to reservations. Thanks, Thought Bubble.
And after that came even more cruelty from the Americans. Hi, I'm on White Stripes. And actually, after the 1880s, people started to feel bad about how Americans were treating the natives so badly. See, in 1881, children's writer Helen Hunt Jackson wrote A Century of Dishonor to talk about the ruthlessness of the government on the Native American tribes. She also wrote Ramona, a love story between two young Californian Indians against the strong injustice of America, because you know nothing gets sympathy like a good tragic love story. Ironically, this increased sympathy for the Native Americans made their situation even worse. See, the humanitarians disrespected the Native Americans as much as the armies did. What they wanted was not to protect the Indians, but to replace their traditions with American customs. In 1887, the government passed the Dawes Severalty Act, which took land from the Native Americans and split it into different holdings of 160 acres. And they promised to give these holdings to individual families instead of the whole tribe, but only if those families acted like good white settlers. See, they also promised to give these families full title to their land and American citizenship, but spoiler alert, the Indians didn't actually get their citizenship until 1924. The extra land not given to the Indian families was sold to the white settlers and the railroads, and that money was used to fund the education and civilization of Indians. Now, for example, the Carlisle Indian School in Pennsylvania took children from the native tribes so that they could be taught education like English and white customs. Because according to the school founder, Captain Richard Henry Pratt, this would kill the Indian and save the man. And yes, you can see these humanitarians were just too kind. Meanwhile, some tribes, specifically the Dakota Sioux, were practicing the ghost dance, a ritual done to ask the spirits to drive the white settlers away and bring back the buffalo. Now, the buffalo were very important to the Native Americans because they provided food, tools, and clothes. But sadly, the buffalo population was dying down because American hunters were hunting buffalo left and right, their Texas cowboy long drive, and their buffalo shooting contests.
Oh my god.
It's things like these that make me not so proud to be an American. In response to the ghost dance, the army attacked the Dakota Sioux in 1890 in a massacre known as the Battle of Wounded Knee. Notice how whenever Americans attack the Indians, it's called a battle, yet whenever Indians attack the Americans, it's called a massacre.
Hi, I'm John Red. Before the white settlers arrived, buffaloes were a huge part of Indian life. Natives were extremely resourceful and used all parts of the buffaloes. However, the incoming settlers massacred herds of bison just for their hides. This greatly undermined the bison population and negatively impacted the Native Americans. Wow, that was depressing. So now let's jump into World War II because that's a much happier topic. Now during World War II, Navajo code talkers are extremely important to the American cause. They translated codes into Native American languages so the enemies couldn't decipher the messages. So seeing how natives helped Americans, you think they have better rights. But no! Natives in the civil rights movement didn't earn much freedom. Instead, they were denied civil rights for many, many years until 1968. The Indian Civil Rights Act of 1968 guaranteed various civil rights such as freedom of speech and assembly. I'll see you next week. Crash Course is directed and produced by Courtney Shen. The script supervisor is Mian Kao. Our assistant producer is me, Angelina Lam. The show is written by my friends Kevin Wang and Huang Kai Le. And our graphic team is Dot Samantha.
You guys spend a lot of hours on this project, huh?
Yeah.
Right.